Hello and welcome to CTV News Across Canada for Friday, March 21st. We've got the top local stories from coast to coast, stories that affect you and our country. Thanks for joining us.
Donning an Oilers jersey with a Carney name bar, the Prime Minister once again leaning on his roots as both an Edmontonian and former Harvard hockey player. He says there's a lot to learn from groups like the Oilers.
The top standards, play like a team. It's a huge, it's a lesson for all of us, right? Lesson for me, lesson for the country. It's great.
National teamwork is being put to the test in Alberta. Carney met with Premier Danielle Smith behind closed doors this morning, an encounter one political analyst says must have been tense.
She's made it crystal clear that she's a political opponent of Mark Carney's, that she opposes the re-election of the Liberal government, and that she'll do everything she can, fighting tooth and nail against their efforts.
The Premier did not take questions from the media today, but in a release said, "We had a very frank discussion in which I made it clear that Albertans will no longer tolerate the way we've been treated by the federal Liberals over the past 10 years. The Post also includes a list of demands the next federal government must address or risk a national unity crisis.
Childish, juvenile, ineffective.
All 9 demands would support Alberta's oil and gas industry in various ways. NDP leader Naheed Nenshi says the Premier's approach won't get Alberta what it needs.
Some of the demands actually make a ton of sense, but you don't state them as demands, otherwise I will force a national unity crisis.
There is no question that Mr. Carney is set against the oil and gas industry and will do everything in his power to shut it down.
At an afternoon press conference to announce new federal money for Jasper recovery, the Prime Minister voiced his support for Alberta's main economic driver.
It's about getting things done. It's about getting, yes, pipelines built across this country so that we can displace imports of foreign oil. It's about building out the energy infrastructure more broadly here in Alberta, which I would add.
All right, Jeremy Thompson joining us live now. And Jeremy, as sources tell CTV News, Carney is expected to call an election Sunday. So has he dropped any information about where he might run?
Well, and of course, there's been speculation about where Mark Carney might run ever since he launched his leadership campaign in our city, again, his hometown here. But we've spoken with multiple political analysts who believe the Prime Minister seeking a seat in our city is unlikely. They say it's more safe of a bet for him to seek a seat somewhere in the Ottawa region, especially as a Liberal and especially as a new Prime Minister who's simply trying to get his foot in the door and get a spot in Parliament. Airman?
All right. Thank you, Jeremy Thompson, reporting live for us tonight.
The preliminary report issued by the Transportation Safety Board says that the Delta Endeavour CRJ 900 that crashed at Pearson Airport last month was descending far too quickly in the final few seconds.
Well, everything was normal right up until about the 150-foot mark.
According to the report, at 175 feet above ground, the plane was descending at a rate of 672 feet per minute. Just a few seconds later, at 50 feet above ground, that descent had increased to 1,114 feet per minute.
The landing gear itself is designed to absorb an impact of 720 feet per minute.
In a video released by the TSB today, the chain of events on impact are detailed.
The side stay attached to the aircraft's right main landing gear fractured, the landing gear retracted, and the wing root fractured between the landing gear and the fuselage.
Once the landing gear failed, the plane rolled onto its side.
The right wing detached from the fuselage, releasing a cloud of jet fuel, which caught fire while the aircraft began to slide along the runway.
Interviews with passengers on the day of the crash spoke to how the landing seemed normal until the last few seconds.
And when we hit, it was just a super hard, like a hit the ground.
Everything, drop it.
After passengers exited the plane, there was a second explosion. According to the TSB, the cause is unknown at this time. Of the 80 people on board the flight from Minneapolis to Toronto, 21 were sent to hospital, 2 suffering serious injuries, and no one was killed.
The question remains is why there was such a high rate of descent. Usually at about the 100 feet mark, we're starting to pull back, the 150 feet, they're pulling back on the power, also starting to level out the aircraft to reduce the descent rate, but that didn't happen. The descent rate actually increased, so it begs to wonder what was going on in the cockpit.
The TDSB is saying they ran multiple simulations to better understand the circumstances surrounding the crash, and their final report will be issued much later. And the Delta Endeavour releasing a statement today saying that they will continue to support the investigation, but out of respect for that investigation, they will refrain from commenting further. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean.
Do we stop them or not?
A brazen theft at this Shoppers Drug Mart in Barhaven Monday night. Video widely circulated online showing thieves filling bags in a big plastic container with expensive perfume and cologne before fleeing the scene. There's been a rash of thefts also targeting stores in Brockville, Arnprior, and Carleton Place.
Whether there's any connection between all of these incidents, we don't know. That's part of the ongoing investigation.
Last week in Arnprior, suspects making off with bags filled with merchandise.
These two people walked into the store, started cleaning off the perfume and cologne shelves with someone standing right there with a camera, getting their images, and they did not seem to care.
At a Shoppers Drug Mart in Brockville on March 2nd, two suspects used a hammer to break the window and stole 2 cabinets worth of high-end perfume with an approximate value of $40,000.
Some of the stuff they're going after is very expensive, cologne and perfume. But what they're doing with it, are they reselling it somewhere? That has yet to be determined by the investigation.
The president of Shoppers Drug Mart says it's taking the issue seriously.
So I think it's well known that there's been, some changes in terms of organized retail crime and theft. And we're meeting those requirements to make sure that customers have a great experience in the store, they feel comfortable in the store, but also our colleagues are safe.
If you're in a store and this happens, police say to get out for your safety, don't try and take a video, and call police. Patricia.
All right, CTV's Katie Griffin live for us tonight.
To be honest with you, Canada only works as a state.
Sarnia's mayor says Canada is being put to the test, and we have to be ready to meet that test.
The point about will Canadians stay strong during this is an important one, because they're going to have to.
The window in Bradley's second-floor office looks out over the St. Clair River towards Michigan. Canadian and American flags continue to fly side by side on the Port Huron side of the St. Clair River. Bradley says he's always valued the cross-border relationship, but has to send a message.
The world's changed. 5 years ago, 20 years ago, we had issues with the Americans, and we always had issues, and they've had issues with us. We worked them out, and we were respectful. Those days are gone.
Bradley wants to remove flags from all municipal properties and are asking others to do the same. It was a move he first contemplated after Canadian fans started booing the American national anthem at games. There aren't many American flags visible in Sarnia, but some are in strategic locations, like at the Pat Stapleton Arena, where U.S. minor hockey players and their families will often come for tournaments.
It will not be forgotten, and it's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt us dramatically.
Sarnia Councillor Bill Dennis opposes removing flags, saying it could hurt businesses in Sarnia and tourism throughout the region.
This could affect, in the summertime, business in Grand Bend. A lot of American beachgoers head there. In Petrolia, we have a beautiful theater there, where it's supported by Americans.
Bradley has his supporters. He was leaving his office Thursday morning when he was greeted by longtime Sarnia resident Don West, who had come to deliver a letter commending the mayor for his stance.
We have to let the president and the administration know that as Canadians, we are very indignant and upset by the way they are talking about Canada and our Prime Minister, and the fact he's thinking of annexing Canada. I don't take those as idle threats from that gentleman.
Other cities have removed flags from civic properties, including Barrie, where strong mayor powers were used to take the flags down. Bradley has opted not to use those powers and will take a motion to council instead. In Sarnia, Jerry DeWan, CTV News.
Mark Carney's first act as Prime Minister threw a wrench into the Conservatives' plan for a carbon tax election, but Pierre Poilievre's party isn't putting the axe the tax signs away.
A common sense, Canada First Conservative government will repeal the entire carbon tax.
Carbon pricing is a tale of two taxes, a consumer levy and pricing on big emitters. Carney signed a directive to have the tax on fuel and natural gas removed on April 1st. Industrial carbon pricing is another system altogether.
These would be facilities like oil sands facilities, electric generators, and factories that produce things that emit a large amount, so above a threshold.
Just 4 provinces and territories use the federal industrial carbon backstop: Prince Edward Island, Nunavut, Manitoba, and the Yukon. The rest operate carbon pricing provincially. Alberta was the first to implement regulations in 2007.
Our company, Strathcona, is taking the risk on the future price of carbon. Now, the reason we took the risk of the future price of carbon is because we think sequestered carbon is a community good.
Getting rid of the federal policy wouldn't necessarily get rid of the industrial carbon tax altogether, and economists say doing so would have little impact on the average consumer.
That's why it's a well-designed policy, doesn't have large pass-through to consumers.
The Canadian Climate Institute says industrial carbon pricing is the most efficient and economical way to cut emissions, and some international markets, such as the EU, are now requiring trading partners to have carbon pricing on large emitters.
So if Canada's going to remove ours and we want to trade more with Europe, we're going in the wrong direction.
Jordan Canagan, CTV News, Calgary.
Hey folks. The 2025 Manitoba budget has a backup plan in case the trade wars with the U.S. and China drag on.
We didn't start this fight, but we are not backing down. We are building up our province.
The province added $1.1 billion in emergency funding, including $500 million in direct supports and loans for businesses, farmers, and students. Under this scenario, the deficit would climb to $1.89 billion by year's end. If the trade wars end, the deficit is projected at $794 million.
Government hinted they've provided some dollars and they've set aside. What we're looking for is a little bit more detail. And
we're pleased to see that money was set aside, but the devil's going to be in the details.
Tariffs or no tariffs, the province says it's spending $3.7 billion on infrastructure projects to boost jobs, including a 4% increase in highways money. There's also a pledge to see a gold mine built in northern Manitoba. The province says this capital plan will lead to nearly 18,000 new jobs.
We're doing it to put Manitobans to work and to protect our economy.
There's also an additional $120 million to finish Phase 2 of 3 of the North Sewage Treatment Plant.
So I was glad to hear an emphasis today on funding for the North End plant. It's critical for our future.
On taxes, there are cuts and hikes. Homeowners will see an additional $100 for the school property tax credit. The payroll tax is being reduced for 875 businesses. The renter's tax credit is going up by $50. The province is freezing income tax bracket thresholds and rates, costing taxpayers $82 million in a full year, and PST is being added to software subscriptions and data storage. The opposition says the tax breaks in the budget don't go far enough.
Manitobans, and in particular in the city of Winnipeg, are facing double-digit education property tax increases.
On healthcare and other highlights, the morning after pill will be added to the free birth control program. There is funding to protect safe abortion services. $10 a day childcare is being expanded to the summer and holidays. There's a new security rebate for businesses up to $2,500. And the province is eliminating rebates for Teslas and EVs from China.
It's part of our government's commitment to be elbows up.
The province also says it's ending a contract with a Texas firm that makes provincial park passes.
Jeff, with all of this uncertainty, is the province still planning to balance the books in 2 years?
Yes, according to Finance Minister Adrian Sell, they are still committed to balancing the budget in 2027. He says they can still invest in things this year to the tune of $25.8 billion that Manitobans need and balance the books. But looking at the deficit projections today, the NDP government has a tall task in front of them.
Does it ever? All right, thanks, Jeff.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
It's been months in the making. The CAQ government's latest bill bans face coverings for students and staff in public and private schools. It's not very common, according to advocates, but it's a matter of principle, not numbers, says Quebec's Education Minister Bernard Drinville.
The overall idea is to protect students from any religious indoctrination.
A recent report studied secularism in 17 schools across the province. It found fewer than 5 students wearing religious face coverings. Another 10 wore head coverings with medical masks longer than necessary. The National Council of Canadian Muslims says the bill doesn't offer real solutions.
Fact of the matter is, how somebody looks or how somebody's dressed doesn't affect the secularism of the state in any way, shape, or form.
The legislation also updates the Education Act to expand Quebec's ban on religious symbols to all public school staff, from teachers to volunteers. Quebec's Liberal Party says it's a step too far.
It's not because I have, for instance, a cross on my neck that I will be performing proselytism. So this is a shortcut, an intellectual shortcut.
The PQ says it doesn't go far enough. Private schools shouldn't be exempt.
We do think that it's wider than the schools. It's in the daycare center. It's on the college as well.
Auditors found just one case of a replacement teacher wearing a religious symbol breaking the rules. But staff could be open to the new measures, Tranville says.
There are examples in the report where someone, and actually it's more than one cases, where the person was told you need to remove your religious sign, and she did agree to it.
Well, it's coercive measures. If you tell somebody, I'm either going to take away your ability to feed your family and pay your rent, right? Or you're going to have to violate your own principles, your own fundamental convictions, and remove your religious symbol. That's a massive problem.
The bill also broadens the requirement for all communication in French schools to be in French. Tranville cites a situation at Montreal's Bedford Elementary School where a, quote, dominant group spoke a foreign language, creating tension. The bill also bans using school or service center spaces for religious practices. Granting religious accommodations that require absence from work might not be allowed in some circumstances. The CAQ government has invoked the notwithstanding clause to protect the bill from constitutional challenges. Maria Saru, CTV News, Quebec City.
It is a prohibited weapon. It is operable. This was loaded at the time.
This semi-automatic assault rifle, one of 197 weapons seized on the downtown east side by Vancouver police during the first 4 weeks of Task Force Barrage.
It's very concerning. I'm not going to lie, I was pretty shocked by the seizures myself.
While many real and imitation handguns were seized, concealed knives were more common, and these aren't for chopping vegetables.
When individuals are carrying something of this nature and they're able to kind of clench it in their fist, well, now they have the opportunity to punch somebody or actually have the opportunity to slice them or cut them.
The VPD says the city-funded task force focused on busting drug traffickers and seizing weapons on the downtown east side is paying off.
Since Task Force Barrage launched on February 13th, Vancouver police have seized 258% more weapons per day compared to the previous month.
Yeah, it's definitely a big problem to tackle, but it's a problem that we are willing to take on and tackle. We've got the resources now, we've got the funding, and we are going to make an honest effort at it. We do believe that this will make a difference. Anytime we take one weapon off the street, that's one person that isn't going to have harm against them.
One violent crime getting more attention, room takeovers. Task Force Barrage officers were called to one on March 11th.
Room takeovers are very common in the downtown east side and occur when criminals force a lawful tenant out of their suite in order to use that person's room for illegal activity. In this case, the squatters had repeatedly threatened and intimidated other people in the building.
Police seized weapons and fentanyl and made an arrest. Many of those getting busted are repeat offenders.
It is frustrating at times to be in a position where we put all that work into it and individuals are being released within hours or days after all this hard work went into pursuing criminal charges. But we stay the course, and we're going to continue to do our part.
Task Force Barrage will continue for the next 6 months. Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Vancouver.
Saskatoon's safe consumption site, Prairie Harm Reduction, has temporarily closed its doors for the next 11 days. Prairie Harm posted to its social media, saying, quote, our team needs to take some time to focus on themselves and the trauma they are experiencing from the overdose crisis.
Honestly, it's been horrible.
The Saskatoon Fire Department responded to an average of 19 overdoses per day over the weekend and 350 overdoses since March 1st. DeMong says staff were pushed to the edge earlier this week, performing back-to-back CPR.
They had to revive a 15-year-old who was pregnant, and that was extremely difficult to watch. And then But then it was like another overdose right after, like they couldn't even regroup.
Last week, the province triggered an emergency response to Saskatoon's drug crisis, which included distributing more naloxone kits to city organizations. DeMong says she notified the Emergency Operations Centre about its short-term shutdown.
I think it caused a lot of worry at that level.
Prairie Harm has been a resource for drug testing, warning users of dangerous levels of fentanyl. DeMong is concerned who will do the testing while their doors are closed. Saskatchewan's Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Lori Carr, says she wasn't aware of Prairie Harm's temporary closure.
I mean, they haven't come directly to us about that, but we do know that Prairie Harm does provide really good outreach and peer support for those types of individuals, so hopefully they will be able to get up and running as soon as possible.
Prairie Harm Reduction is scheduled to reopen at the end of the month on March 31st. Laurel Woodward, CTV News, Saskatoon.
It's open water as far as the eye can see. A handful of boats sit idle, tied to the wharf, and their crews waiting for the season to pick up. But there's a storm brewing, not on the water, but in the seafood market.
When we put the tariffs on China on their EVs and their aluminum and steel back in October, I think many of us kind of went, oh, wonder what that's going to mean.
But then Donald Trump got elected and started to talk tariffs, which preoccupied the seafood sector. And now China has added to the pressure.
It remains to be seen if our customers will accept a 25% price increase, because that's ultimately what it means, whether they pay the tariffs or our exporters pay the tariff.
Live lobster shipments dominate Nova Scotia's trade with China. If the tariff battle continues, the earnings of crews who bring in the catch will drop.
We're the first ones to take the hit. You know, in some cases, maybe there's buyers that are not operating on a 25% margin. So if they can't pass that on to their customers on the other end, they can't absorb it themselves.
It's not just seafood feeling the squeeze. Tariffs on agriculture are also in play, raising concerns in another key industry.
We're looking at all the tools available in our toolkit at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to make sure that we have supports in place. Had conversations with Farm Credit Canada, but of course, you know.
It's a waiting game for the fishermen. In the meantime, the sector is trying to expand its trade options.
Companies do these things all the time on their own, but this will add a new sense of urgency to those efforts.
For now, uncertainty hangs over the wharf, but come peak season, the true impact of the tariffs will be felt with every haul. Hafsa Arif, CTV News, Eastern Passage.
Growing population in Guelph, a new high school is being built in the south end to accommodate more students. That development means Upper Grand District School Board is reviewing school boundaries, which is causing some concern for local parents at Taylor Evans Public School.
In every 7 scenarios, we are now being sent to Centennial High School, starting in September 2026. Potentially.
Although Jody Hawkin has no issue with Centennial, she has serious concerns about the safety of students getting to and from school.
Our concern with that is that although if you just look at a map of Guelph, Centennial does look really close to us, and it's a very quick drive on the highway. It's actually a 75-minute walk.
The overpass on Highway 124 going over Highway 6, that's the route that most of our kids would have to take. There's no bike lanes, there's no sidewalks, there's nothing. So I'm not really sure how anyone would walk across that bridge, to be honest. It's definitely a car transportation bridge, and it's fairly rapid speeds.
A potential change for students who had planned on going to GCVI.
All of the options currently say that Taylor Evans go to Centennial. There's no other options for them. So I really hope they listen and put out a few more options for us.
The school board telling CTV News in an email, the UGDSB is in the early stages of the boundary review process, and we are continuing to gather input from school communities. Student safety is always our primary concern. The board will have additional options presented to the Finance and Facilities Committee in April.
The school board says all options will be reviewed over the coming months, with a decision set to be made in September. Ashley Bacon, CTV News, Guelph.